we learn from the book of Proverbs, a house is built with wisdom. B'chokhmah yibaneh bayit, and is established with discernment. Uvitvuna yitkonan, and with knowledge, its rooms are filled with precious and beautiful things. Uvada'at chadarim yimalu, kol hon yakar v'na'im. You can read this proverb as important instructions for building a house, giving a kind of counsel often left unwritten in instruction manuals, along with the proper amount of lumber and nails and the correct tools for the job. In order to construct a well-built house on a solid foundation, it is crucial to have chokhmah, wisdom, tevunah, discernment, and da'at, knowledge or technical know-how. With that trifecta, you can do a lot. With chokhmah, tevunah, and da'at, with wisdom, discernment, and knowledge, you can build a beautiful house filled with beautiful things. The book of Proverbs, our tradition teaches, was written by Solomon. But you should forget about that. Solomon, if there was a Solomon, probably couldn't write and most likely couldn't read. And his father David, the exalted king of Israel who defeated the Philistines and forged a nation from diverse tribes, you should forget about that too. Potentially, David's kingdom was built with thuggery. His boardwalk empire, no larger than a few square blocks of Southie. And so, in the immortal words of Tony Soprano, Alav HaShalom, forget about it. I admit to feeling just a little uncomfortable telling a whole room full of Jews on the holiest day of the year to forget. Telling Jews to forget cuts across the grain of so much that we've been taught. After all, and as it has often been said, Judaism is a religion constructed on the bedrock of memory. With a hammering insistence, our texts command us to always remember and to never forget. But what happens when what we remember is incorrect, or when collective memory is wrong? What happens when memory doesn't serve us, but we serve it? What happens when our past impedes progress, when memory constricts us to comfort zones, and what we really need to do is to forget about it and to move on? So on this 10th day of Teshuvah, of repentance, during this period when we are repeatedly commanded to remember, I want to talk about forgetting. Not simply forgetting, mind you, but the art of it, the art of forgetting. The art of forgetting combines thoughtful acts of forgetting, of unlearning, with the wisdom to let go. It combines new knowledge and new ways of teaching with the ability to discern outmoded memories from purposeful ones, the ability to discern, in the words of our proverb, the memories and values that are yakar, precious and necessary, from those that are merely na'im, pleasant and nice. Tonight, I want to talk about the art of forgetting and the necessity to master this craft in order to build the future of our community, the future of this house, during a time of diminishing attachment to Israel, to denominations, and to religious institutions. To build our future, we will need to become artisans of forgetting, and today is the perfect day to begin our apprenticeship. Long concerned with memory loss, with forgetting, our tradition developed mnemonics, letters, words, objects, devices that help us to remember. 10 fingers, 10 commandments. A cardboard tasting bread called matzah that reminds us of Egypt and of our exodus, the touchstone of Jewish memory. Because remembering needs to begin at a young age, we developed a 4-sided top with the Hebrew letters for "a great miracle happened there." But when our mnemonics become outmoded and need to change, we should forget about them. Many of our mnemonics need to change because compared to a generation ago, we now know so much more about our past. Wonderfully, we live at a time of tremendous developments in the study of Jewish history. And sometimes, new knowledge reduces to rubble previous understandings of our past, or necessitates gut rehabs in order to bring them up to date. Israel, understandably, has been the site of so much of this new learning. Because of new approaches to archaeology and epigraphy, we now know so much more about David, about Solomon, about the rural fundamentalists that we call the Maccabees. We have new understandings of what happened at Masada. Perhaps most pertinent for these months of renewed efforts of peace, the research of the new historians, as they are called, Israeli historians such as Benny Morris, Tom Segev, and others, their research has renovated our understandings of 1948 and 67 and the growth of Israel as the dominant military power in the Middle East. Our collective memory stands corrected because of the new historians' work exposing Jewish culpability in the Palestinian refugee crisis of 48 and of imperial overreach in 67, facts that should make us more attuned to the Palestinian narrative of crisis and of nationalistic aspirations. Now, we might not always like that story. We might not always think that their narrative is as legitimate or as long as our own. But to deny another people's victimization and their claims to sovereignty and self-determination is to undermine our own values and to forget our own stories. The commandment to never forget binds together the memory of the Exodus with the slaughter of the Holocaust. Never forgetting should fuse Jewish values with the imperatives of Jewish power. One of the privileges of power is that it enables you to wield your values. And we are reminded of our values every time we eat cardboard-tasting matzah. As we chew, we remember that we were strangers in the land of Egypt, so we should love the stranger as we love ourselves. We remember that we should uphold the rights of the stranger and the widow and the orphan. And as we attempt to digest the bread of affliction, we should remember that Palestinian blood is as red as ours, that they, like us, like everyone, were created b'tselem Elohim, created in the image of God. But as the Israeli government continues to treat these bedrock Jewish values as na'im and not as yakar, as nice but not necessary, American residents of the House of Israel, particularly those who are my age and younger, they quietly or not so quietly slip out the door. Artisans of forgetting wield stories with great discernment. We know when to use the right narrative for the job. Yet at a time of unparalleled Jewish power, powerful Jews continue to tell the story of Jewish crisis. It is an old and sacred story of how we rose up from the ashes to build a sanctuary for Jews from around the world. Because Israel is a country in perpetual danger, as this narrative teaches, we need to support Israel because we never know when there will be a new Holocaust and Jews will need a safety net. But telling this sacred story of crisis to many of us born after 67 does not reinforce the bonds of peoplehood, not sufficiently nuanced, not incorporating all that we have done as a people, the good and the bad. The crisis narrative of Israel does not account for the history that we have witnessed and all that we have now learned. Like hammering a screw, it's the wrong tool for the job. Our job is to perpetuate Judaism both here and in the world at large. Discerning builders of the house of Israel who understand our past, recognize that it is our values and not solely our sovereignty that has long ensured our survival. And at this time in history, and despite what we are repeatedly taught, Israel finally possesses the security to fuse Jewish values with its power. We no longer need to build our house on a foundation of crisis and of death. As Rabbi Daniel Hartman taught those of us who participated in the I Engage course, it is time for a new narrative of Jewish values, of Israel as it is and Israel as it ought to be. Now, some might argue that I'm naive or uninformed, that we don't have the luxury of wielding Jewish values in the rough and tumble world of the modern Middle East. But the continual sacrifice of values on the altar of security seems only to render Israel as perpetually insecure, or at least that's what we keep being told. So isn't it time to forget about it? Isn't it finally the time to utilize our know-how in order to construct a new story? A house is built with wisdom. It is established with discernment. With knowledge, its rooms are filled with precious and beautiful things. Filling this room in our well-built house on this 10th day of Teshuvah are all of you. And look at you. You're beautiful. No, don't look away. Adele, you're beautiful. Our diversity is a precious and beautiful thing. Like never before residing in our house are interfaith families, Jews of color, of patrilineal descent, of varied sexual and gender identities, ages, educational backgrounds, incomes, professions, experiences, and desires. Our ever-increasing diversity presents opportunities for creativity and for the continual flourishing of Jewish life in Boston. But as with the state of Israel, there's a crisis narrative about Temple Israel and the present state of large-scale, well-established urban synagogues across this country. It's a narrative in which all of us are the protagonists, and it goes something like this. We've come together in this Beit Knesset, our house of gathering, faced with the challenge of constructing a community in the era of iPad, iPhone, and now from the Central Conference of American Rabbis, you can buy a digital prayer book called Tefillah. And as American culture increasingly emphasizes our ability to choose from a variety of activities and products that can be tailor-made to our lifestyles, many congregants expect, rightly or wrongly, individualized programs and services within their synagogue, within their house. Call it iTemple. And if you take iTemple and situate it as we are, in an increasingly congested part of the city, it becomes harder to drive here from the suburbs. And to get to our house, many of our members drive by other, newer, more convenient houses of worship. And our children or grandchildren, they're less interested than we had hoped in taking on the ownership of our house because, since it's not created in their image, it's really not their dream home. And then there's the discomforting knowledge of a new generation of empty nesters, less prepared than their predecessors to pay for the education of a new generation of children growing up in our house. And now that their babies have left their home in order to make homes of their own, those same baby boomers, they're slipping ever so quietly out the door. And so goes the story a narrative of communal crisis repeatedly told in seminaries and by sociologists, discussed by temple presidents in chat rooms, and analyzed by clergy at their yearly conferences. And we might not like that story, and I know that I don't. To those of us committed to building the future of our synagogue, the story of the demise of large American congregations can give you that feeling like a pit in your stomach, like when you notice, when you weren't really looking for them, large cracks in the foundation of your house. But then I remember that artisans of forgetting know when to let go of the temple as it once was, in order to discern Temple Israel as it is, and to envision what it ought to be. And then I remember that artisans of forgetting know when to wield the right narrative for the job, our job, of perpetuating Judaism and of enacting its values in the world at large. And since it does not incorporate everything that we have learned and all of the good that we have done, the crisis narrative of urban congregations is not sufficiently nuanced for the task at hand. Stories are our bread and butter. It's what we eat in our house. And on this day of Teshuvah, when we turn and take a hard look at our past, we remember a long and legitimate narrative of a synagogue that fuses its values with its power. We digest a powerful story of a congregation that wields the values of innovation and entrepreneurship, of collaboration, sweat equity, and perhaps most precious, most valuable, the thoughtful repurposing of the past. Reform Jews are good at that, unrivaled, really. Wise repurposing of the past is the type of greenhouse building that we excel at. Just look at 3 examples from our CV. Ohel Tzedek, a contemporary updating of the ancient values of righteous action. The Caring Community, itself a renovation of a TI initiative called Hinenu, and both established on the essential and sacred value of caring for those in need. And then there's the Riverway Project, constructed with the knowledge of a creative response to the destruction of the Second Temple, when, at a time of religion's decentralization, God gained a new name, Hamakom, the place. It's an enduring rabbinic idea that theologizes space, that wherever Jews gather for study and prayer, that's the place in which God dwells. But artisans of forgetting never rest on their laurels. Ever willing to renovate self-conceptions when faced with new knowledge, artisans of forgetting wield the wisdom to let go of the past before it impedes progress, to forget about even our greatest successes before they constrict us to comfort zones. This past spring, we all gained the new knowledge that Rabbi Friedman will retire in 3 years. And this news, understandably, provoked worry for some who live in our house. But we all should consider this knowledge a gift, because even though we may understand so much more about the past than a previous generation, it is still exceedingly rare for a Jewish community to know anything at all about its future. What a gift to have a bit of clear knowledge about our future and ample time to prepare for it. So if you're worried, forget about it. We all should forget about it on this day when we've entered our house to begin our apprenticeship in the art of forgetting. Because in our house, on this day, we have a clergy team spanning 5 decades and 2 generations, and we love one another like a family. living in our house, we have wise and discerning lay leaders who possess the technical know-how to build our future. And on this day, we have in our house all of you, our essential and beautifully diverse partners in the construction of community. We learn from the book of Proverbs. A house is built with wisdom. It is established with discernment. With knowledge, its rooms are filled with precious and beautiful things. And on this day, when we have all come together in our Beit Knesset, filling its rooms to study our past and to offer prayers for the new year, God, too, dwells in our house. God is in this place as we master an ancient art, one that combines new knowledge with the wisdom to let go, an enduring yet challenging practice necessary for the construction of our future, a difficult art which we remember by the single word mnemonic, teshuvah.